The year is 1986, and you have an imminent fight against Steve the Hair Harrington.
Yeah, it's me, don't cream your pants.
Knowing how your opponent fights can be the difference between winning and losing. And with help of this video, I will show you exactly how to fight Steve Harrington. Who is Steve Harrington?
I'm Steve Harrington.
Not necessarily who is he as a person,
He's awesome.
but who is he as a fighter and how can we use his fighting style to our advantage. When approaching Steve for a fight, it is important to engage him under a very specific set of circumstances to limit his abilities. The first thing to make sure of is that you're not threatening any of his children. Like a mama bear protecting their cubs, if Steve sees someone he cares about in danger, he will enter Ultra Instinct mode, giving him a buff to all his stats and instill him with a determination to fight until his very last breath. Although he is still beatable when in Ultra Instinct mode, it is best to avoid activating it as it becomes substantially more difficult to defeat him. Steve also has a weapon proficiency, his attack strength increasing significantly when armed. Blunt objects such as telephones are dangerous in his hands, but if you see Steve wielding his spiky death bat, you should immediately disengage and abandon the fight. Steve has put a lot of his skill points into his dexterity stat, making him shifty and hard to hit. He has middling strength, but with his advanced speed, he opts for a quick barrage of jabs rather than trying to connect with a single haymaker. He also has a solid constitution stat despite his slight build, allowing him to eat punches from his opponents without being instantly KO'd. Now, despite the fact that Steve is a formidable fighter, his career record leaves something to be desired. His upside down record is 3 wins, 2 losses, which looks decent. However, for his first 2 wins, he not only relied heavily on his death bat, but neither one of those fights were regulation, as there were multiple combatants involved. Therefore, they must be removed from his official record, which falls to 1 win and 2 losses, something that Steve will no doubt be looking to improve upon. With that said, the stats don't tell the whole story, so in order to better understand how Steve performed in these fights, we need to analyze the game tape. Steve's first official fight was against Jonathan Byers. Steve himself has tried to scratch this loss from the record, as he states that
Twice. Jonathan, year prior?
Listen, that doesn't count.
Why wouldn't it count? Because it looks like he beat the shit out of you.
Yeah,
You got a fat
it was
lip, crooked nose,
a bunch of
swollen
things
eye,
kind of
lot of
occurring
blood,
that all
lot of
added up.
blood.
despite his appeal to have this loss removed from his record, it currently stands and serves as a good entry point in our analysis. The fight starts off with Steve pushing and goading Jonathan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that house is full of screw-ups. You know, I guess I shouldn't really be surprised. A bunch of screw-ups in your family. I mean,
leave
your
it.
mom. I mean, I'm not even surprised
Jonathan,
what happened to your
leave
brother.
it.
I'm sorry I have to be the one to
Steve,
tell you,
shut
but
up.
the Byers, their family is a disgrace to the entire...
This is an instant of Steve attempting to intimidate his opponent with a taunt, but it ends up backfiring, sending Jonathan into a berserker rage. This allows Jonathan to get the first punch while Steve is unprepared, dramatically increasing Jonathan's chances of winning, as it is critical to get in the first punch on Steve as it disorients him and stops him from getting into a rhythm. In an attempt to buy time, Steve tackles Jonathan, engaging him in a grapple. This is a move that Steve is known to do from time to time, as it helps him try to regain control of the fight, or at the very least stop a potential onslaught from his opponent. However, where Steve makes a mistake is by taking the fight to the ground. Steve's advantage in speed is mitigated on the ground, as the most important stat becomes strength. Jonathan quickly rolls on top of Steve and is about to take advantage of Steve's misplay. He would have been successful had Steve not made a great recovery by stunning Jonathan with a quick knee to the ribs. Steve takes this opportunity to stand up, but Jonathan pursues and strikes Steve with another solid punch. Steve finally gets set, which leads to his best moment in the fight. He waits for Jonathan to come to him, where he then does his signature dodge into counterattack. When fighting Steve, you need to make sure you don't overextend like Jonathan does here, as Steve will take advantage with his outstanding speed. However, Steve does fail to take advantage of the opening he just created, as he overestimates the damage his punch did, allowing Jonathan to attack with another solid punch of his own.
Stop! You're gonna hurt him! Jonathan! Stop! Hey guys, Jonathan, get off of him! Stop!
With Steve now disoriented, Jonathan continues his attack, sending Steve once again to the ground, where Jonathan pins him and proceeds to feed him handfuls of knuckle sandwiches. Moving on to Steve's fight against Billy Hargrave, we get to see a better showcase of Steve's overall ability. There is an immediate difference in the way the fight starts, as Steve is the one who engages first.
No.
You are.
With his children in harm's way, Steve comes to the rescue, socking Billy in the nose with a pretty good shot. He does pause to give it a one-liner before throwing the punch, which could be something to take advantage of. With Billy now in an enraged state, he tries to unleash a haymaker on Steve, who is ready and uses his signature dodge and counter, clocking Billy with a solid left hook. Steve continues his attack by following it up with a pair of right hooks. Steve has Billy on the back foot. However, the tide of the fight is about to turn as Billy reaches for a nearby plate. Steve's head is super vulnerable to dinner plates, so when Billy breaks it over Steve's head, it is super effective. With his ploy proving successful, Billy now becomes the aggressor, punching Steve as he is trying to compose himself. Billy pulls Steve into a grapple before performing an impressive headbutt throw combo.
No one tells me what to do.
With Steve now on the ground, Billy feeds him a tray full of knuckle sandwiches, similar to how Jonathan did. A significantly better performance in this bout for Steve, but the end is the same result.
Don't sweat it, Harrington. Today's just not your day, man.
With his 2 losses out of the way, it's now time to analyze Steve's winning match. Going up against a Russian communications officer, whose name is probably Alexander, Steve brings the heat early and doesn't let up the entire fight. To prevent Alex from shooting him with his gun, Steve charges in and attempts to grapple. Alex manages to fling Steve off and tries his luck with a right hook. Shifty as ever, Steve is able to dodge the hit, but because of his awkward position, he is unable to make use of his counterattack. Alex then gets Steve turned around in an attempt to try and get something going, only to catch the sharp end of Steve's elbow. Steve then uses his speed to pounce on the stumbling Alex, picking up the nearby phone, which he uses to great effect. With his weapon proficiency, Steve gains knockout power by using the phone as a weapon, sending Alex off to an early sleep.
Dude! You did it! You won a fight!
So in conclusion, here are the things to look out for when fighting Steve Harrington. Don't threaten his children. Don't fight him if he has his death bat. Get the first punch on him. Keep up a steady attack. Watch out for his signature dodge into counterattack. He has a weak ground game, so use that to your advantage. His head is extremely susceptible to dinner plates. Now you're ready to fight Steve Harrington. Although, maybe you shouldn't. After all, he's a really cool guy, so maybe be his friend instead.
Hey! Oh!
Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe.